Greetings, old school magic players, and welcome to the Four Horsemen. Greetings, old school magic players. Welcome to a Friday night with the Four Horsemen Old School Magic Players Group. I'm the Chadster, and I'm joined here tonight with John Eckleberry. What's up, John?
How's it going?
It's another Friday night old school magic get together, and tonight John and I are going to be covering our tournament 18 quarterfinals match. This is the last of our quarterfinals for tournament 18. Four Horsemen Old School Magic is the only old school magic format that focuses exclusively on the original first four expansions of Magic the Gathering. Check us out at fourhorsemanmagic.com. We've got a spicy and updated banned and restricted list. This list is in effect for this event. If you've seen our prior videos, you've gotten a look at this. We are in this video, we're in the week 4, the last of the quarterfinals matches week. And we'll be proceeding on with semifinals and finals in the next video releases. Tournament 18 is going to be wrapping up actually a little bit later than scheduled. We're probably going to go a week or two over to get the finals match in, but we've got some great prizes, including our Ken Meyer Jr. playmats and our top 8 proxy prizes. In this video today, this is kind of John's batch number 1 of the proxy cards he's made. And we've got an exclusive preview of batch number 2. All of these proxy promo cards are made by John Eckleberry. And John, would you like to just talk a little bit about how you came up with this batch number 2 for the promo cards?
Oh, sure. So the first wave was mostly tokens, and then some cards from the Arabian Nights comic books, and then I finished out that wave. I ended up making a few more from the comics, but there's also a really cool Fallen Angel comic book out there, and there's a lot of cool art in it. And I was just like, yeah, this can make a whole set of cards. Like, I was just gonna make one Fallen Angel, and then I ended up making a play set. So you'll see that some of them are full art, some of them are half art. I actually printed them double-sided so that the full art's on one side and the half art's on the other. So whichever you prefer, you can use. But some really cool pieces from Richard Kane Ferguson and Clyde Caldwell and Anson Maddox. And then you'll also see a couple of Hellraiser tokens there with Pinhead. I've got an Imprison and an Abyss. Those just seemed fitting for Pinhead.
Yeah, the players really dig this stuff. And if you make top 8 or above in our tournaments, John will be sending you some of these. Either batch 1, you can take your choice. Things like Guardian Beast, Oubliette, the Rook tokens and islands, Jusum Gens, or any of these cool Fallen Angel or Hellraiser arts. Join us for our next tournament. Tournament 19 is going to be coming up here in just a few weeks. Fourhorsemanmagic.com. Go to tournaments and go to tournament 19 for the details. And we also give away for first place prize winners a special Ken Meyer Jr. Guardian Beast, Purple Moonlight, Four Horsemen exclusive numbered stitch signed playmat by Ken Meyer Jr. made specifically and exclusively for Four Horsemen. These are given away to our first place winners so you can compete and win this awesome playmat with the unique Guardian Beast art. All right, John, let's get into our Tournament 18 last quarterfinals match. Tonight we have Mono Green Stompy versus Jeskai Sage Robots. Our brackets, looking at the brackets here, this is John DeProse and Brandon Equals. And let's take a look at John's deck, the Mono Green Stompy deck. John, what do you think about this brew?
I love it. It's just a bunch of dudes. Like, there's like no spells in this deck. There's a few in the sideboard, but it's just play a dude every turn and smash face.
Right, or multiple dudes. We've never seen a deck quite.
Indeed.
We've never seen a deck quite like this in Four Horsemen. We've seen some pretty, aggro Arabian Nights decks with, Ifrits and Djinns, but there's been some decks kind of like this in Atlantic and in the Winter Derby, but we really haven't seen anything like this in Four Horsemen until Tournament 18.
Yeah, I feel like in the EC formats and whatnot, you do in Atlantic, you do see occasionally just unpowered mono green deck smash face. Obviously, we're not playing the ABU cards, but this is kind of the ported version of that, where you just play all the most efficient guys that you can find and slap them down on the table.
Yeah, it's pretty wild because we've seen a lot of synergy decks. We've seen combo decks. We're seeing life gaining decks and decks that make you play 3.5 hour misery matches, which are grueling and not fun. But we really haven't just seen a straight up 36 creature deck that has one strategy and one strategy only. It's pretty wild. So this mono green Stompy deck,
I like it. I'm into it.
It's got some cool stuff in the sideboard too. The Sword of the Ages I think is particularly spicy as a way to throw off some of the stalemate matches that you might run into, where you can just, if you can't attack with all your creatures because of Maze of Ith or Rook Eggs or something like that, or big walls that might be holding you back, you can just get this Sword of the Ages into play, and then you can start just throwing your creatures. You can get set up for that one turn where you throw your creatures at your opponent. Sword of the Ages, I'm going to put it up here. Really cool card. You sacrifice Sword of the Ages and any number of creatures you control, and the Sword of the Ages deals X damage to any target, where X is the total power of the creatures sacrificed this way, and then you exile the Sword of the Ages, and of course Sword of the Ages comes into play tapped. Pretty spicy card. Sideboard card nonetheless, but still really interesting. And then of course the Avoid Fates. Avoid Fate is a card that I have really started to admire and like, particularly in Four Horsemen, because it's another way to counter stuff.
Yeah, there's not really any counter spells. I mean, there's the 1 mana drain, and then there's remove soul for creatures. But if you want to protect your creatures, all you've really got is like flash counter and force spike, and those probably aren't going to stop low cost stuff. Especially, I mean, the flash counter can only counter instants, so it's not going to stop sorcery. But I mean, what would it even counter? I guess maybe best case scenario, it counters a fissure.
Boomerang.
But
boomerang.
This is pretty cool because boomerang too. You're right. But this is neat because not only does it counter instants, but it counters enchantments too.
Right.
And so you can counter a Spirit Link that's going to hit your guy, or a Demonic Torment that's going to hit your guy, or one of the many creature enchantments that are popping up in this format.
Yeah, it's pretty sweet. And let's see, what else have we got in this deck? There's the Whirling Dervish, which normally may not be that great, but in this deck with so many other creatures, that's just going to be one more creature that grows. He can be pumped by Pendlehaven early, and if you don't deal with him, he can get out of control. And then there's plenty of artifact kill. There's the 4 Crumbles in the sideboard, which, Crumble is also a card that's really been steadily gaining a lot of popularity in Four Horsemen because it's so versatile. It's a way for you to gain life if you need to pop your Triskelion after you've used it, or any other artifact. It's an instant, so it's sneaky, or it can kill your opponent's artifacts, things like a factory or a Jaloom Tome or something along those lines. Having this in the sideboard, pretty pretty sneaky. And combining it with the scavenger folk, the scavenger folk have been also a staple of Four Horsemen, basically ever since Tournament 4, or what is it, Tournament 4 or 5, when Matt Mesa beat Brian Weissman in our first event where we had Brian Weissman play with us. I think that was Tournament 4, right, John?
Tournament 4, yeah.
Yeah. So ever since Tournament 4, Scavenger Folk have really kind of been a staple because they're so versatile. A 1/1, they can pop off an artifact, or you can get in for some early damage. And of course, our Canadian friends refer to these guys as the crackheads.
Do they?
With this crazy art, But having 4 Scavenger Folk, 3 in the main and 1 in the sideboard, and then the 4 crumbles, John's got plenty of anti-artifact capability here. The other card that we kind of really like in this deck is the Gasman Ogre. John, what do you think about Gasman Ogre?
Yeah, I think it's great. I mean, certainly Chain Lightning is a thing in this format, so if you run into a deck that has Chain Lightnings, you might want to sign them out. But if you're playing against somebody that doesn't, it's a pretty cool turn 1 play.
Yeah. We don't really have Savannah Lion. We don't have Ironclaw Orcs, in this format. So Gasman Ogre, he can be, if your opponent's not playing red and doesn't have a way to deal a damage early, he's just going to come down on turn 1 and be hitting in on turn 2 a great deal of the time. And once you're ahead, you're going to run away with it, particularly in this deck, since he's got so many other 1 cost and 2 cost creatures. So really like seeing the ogre here. Okay, so John's mono green Stompy deck. John DeProse, one of our Australian players, in the quarterfinals here. Let's take a look at Brandon Equals deck. Brandon's playing a Jeskai Sage Robots deck. John, what do you think about Brandon's red, white, and blue robots build?
I think this photo hurts my neck. It's pretty cool. I mean, it's got a lot of staple cards that we've seen played in the format, just kind of remixed. I don't think we've seen anybody play red, white, blue, or if we have, it hasn't been it's been a while. But these are cards that are tried and true that we've seen through many tournaments. I don't really have any issues with his main board, and I think Scimitar is really cool too. We've kind of seen more people playing that as well. It's having the flying damage to chip in with is nice, but also just that huge butt on it is really difficult to get rid of if you don't have an artifact destruction effect.
Right. Yeah, the Dancing Scimitar from Arabian Nights. 1/5 flying artifact creature for 4 mana. This card, not only does it keep climbing in value, but this is a card that has a lot of versatility. It can be played in any deck. It can block almost every Djinn and Efreet out there, with the exception of Serendib Djinn and Juzum Djinn. It can block Urnum, no problem. It can block Serendib Efreet, no problem. It can block Ghost Ship and Azure Drake, no problem. It's got this, kind of interesting niche spot where it's not very good offensively over the short term, but it's extremely good defensively, and over the long term, you can chip in with it.
Yeah, I like it. It's funny, I was playing in another format today. I was playing in Forgotten Realms, and I put a couple of carnivorous plants in my deck. And the reason I did it is because in that format, it's really good at blocking Daralor, and it can even eat a Daralor and live. We don't have to worry about Daralors here, but it is interesting that carnivorous plant exists in this format, although we don't really see it because it has the same casting cost as Urnum, so why wouldn't you just play the Urnum? And I don't know that most decks need both of those, and they probably don't want to be on the defense. They want to be on the attack if you're playing green, as we've seen from the other green list we just looked at.
Right. Yeah, Urnum Djinn just becomes a much better option. But totally digging the dancing scimitar. And speaking of reminiscent magic, one of the things that's flavorful and fun about Four Horsemen is it gives you the chance to play with a lot of cards that would never see play otherwise in old school. And it also gives you a chance to recapture a bit of that, sidewalk magic that you remember from your childhood. And Dancing Scimitar was reprinted and revised, and I remember playing this card in my early decks. Blocking Urnum Djinn, being able to handle a lot of the big flyers, and him only costing 4 mana of any color makes him super super versatile. So it's very cool to see the reminiscent Dancing Scimitar showing up in Brandon's Jeskai Sage Robots deck. The other card that I really like in this deck, and we've seen more and more of this card over time, is the Sage. The Sage of Lat-Nam. What do you think about Sage of Lat-Nam, John?
Yeah, he's solid. He's a 1/2, so he can block little guys and live. He draws cards, which is kind of at a premium in this format. There's not a ton of card draw, and we just stuck the best card draw engines that we have access to on the restricted list. We put Greed on there, and we put Sylvan Library on there. So being able to recycle, a Tetravis that has already blown its arms off, or a Mana Rock that you don't need, or whatever else you have laying around, and snag an extra card for it's pretty good.
Yeah. We see a lot of this in these more control-y type decks, but I faced off against a robots deck that was running Sage of Lat-Nam in the Winter Derby. I played against Rob Hackney, who's won the Derby before and is an extremely good player, and he was running a robots deck was basically all the bolts, the chains, the sonic blasts, and all the robots, with things like Juggernaut and Suchi and Triskelion and the Sage of Lat-Nam was what really made that deck work. He was also running Atogs, which was really cool. Also a card in Four Horsemen. It's interesting that Brandon Eccles is not running Atog, but he very well could be. Why do you think he decided not to run Atog in this deck?
He doesn't really have. It's not it's not an aggro deck. It's not a weenie deck. He doesn't have a lot of early stuff, and he has the Sage filling that slot. I think he'd rather have the Sage than the Atog. He could have both, but what would he even feed to it? Like he has a few artifacts, but I don't think Atog is really the strategy that you want with this build.
Fair enough. Yeah, I think you're right. And when it comes to the Sage, he's also an excellent early creature against the land tax decks and some of these green weenie decks, right? If you don't have your Pendelhaven, you just have a Scavenger Folk or a Tundra Wolf or something like that, the fact that the Sage is a 1/2 instead of a 1/1, it seems like a very marginal difference, but it can actually be relevant. And he can block and deal with stuff early if you have to face down something, hefty, and he can draw you cards in the meantime. So pretty cool to see the Sage at work in this Jeskai Sage Robots deck. There's some staples that I think are also noteworthy. A couple of those Tetravis, those can be split off, and you can break off the Tetravite tokens. He's running 2 Spirit Links, 3 Divine Offerings. Why do you think he's not running 4 Spirit Links, John?
I don't know. I mean, maybe he just only felt like he had room. He wanted to kind of diversify a little bit. He does have Chain Lightnings already. He does have some Remove Souls to stop things before they come down. He's got some one-ofs over here. He's got a Pyrotechnics in there, along with the 2 blue cards that we see, of course, frequently, the Mana Drain and the Recall. Yeah. He just felt like he didn't have room and he had to trim something to make the deck work. You'll notice that there's also 3 Sages and 3 Scimitars, and there's only 2 ofs of some of these other spells. He's really just trying to maximize to have the flexibility of all these different things. He doesn't always have to have a Spirit Link, but he'll want one or two, during the course of a game probably. And you'll also see this in his sideboard too. Like, he's got kind of just a lot of like one-ofs for flexibility. Like, he has one Gaseous Form, one Flash Flood, one Amnesia, one Felden's Cane. Like, there's a bunch of kind of one Skull of Orm. If he was in a match where he was really worried about needing more Spirit Links, he could bring in that Skull and recur some Spirit Links to play them again. But he seems to have a lot of silver bullets. He even has, I see that little wing poking out there. He even has an Acid Rain in there, which is pretty cool against a mono green deck, right?
Yeah, that is a very good point. Let me flash up the Acid Rain here and get back over to Brandon's deck. The Acid Rain is a card from Legends that's kind of like Tsunami from the base sets. Instead of destroying all islands, Acid Rain destroys all forests for the same price. 3 colorless and a blue, and it's a sorcery. So yes, this card could be interesting. I think the tricky thing is by the time you get to 4 mana with a green deck, the green Stompy deck only needs basically 2 mana to really get going.
Yeah, the Stompy deck might have 4 dudes out already by then, but I mean, cutting off their supply is still not the worst thing in the world.
It can really help with those killer bees that John DeProse has. So
yeah, and if he can incapacitate a couple early creatures, like if he can maybe like remove Soul one and then Spirit Link another one and then slap down that Acid Rain, like he might be able to kind of turn a game around.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough match though. So let's talk about predictions. We've got John DePro's mono green Stompy versus Jeskai Sage Robots, Brandon Equals. What are your predictions here, John?
I think the green deck's definitely going to come out the gate faster and harder. Whether or not the Robots deck can rebound and kind of lock out some of those early threats and then claw its way back up, we'll see. It is certainly possible. He does have a lot of answers in his deck.
So it seems like Brandon's got an uphill battle here then.
I think so.
All right. Well, let's go to the match and let's find out. This was a pre-recorded game, so John and I are going to switch over to the video and we will get ready to rumble. All right, John, I'm all queued up here and ready when you are.
All right, let's do the countdown.
All right. On the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. All right, John and I are playing this at 1.5x speed. And we've got John DeProse on the left side here. Nice Guy Eddie, which is AKA Brandon Equals, on the right. So, John, have you played with Brandon in some of the other formats?
Yes, I have played him in a few other formats, but I don't think I've actually played him in Four Horsemen yet. But I have played him in others formats on Discord.
I think I played him in the Mirage block format.
Yeah, I may have played him there as well, and I think I also played him in U40, but I don't remember. There's so many leagues.
Okay, the guys are doing their piles here.
I like his Shivan mat. I have that mat. It was one of the first old school mats I bought, and I played on that Shivan mat for like my first probably year of old school, my first year, and then I switched over to a Doug Schuler mountain mat. But I do still love that mat. It's in the closet though, rolled up. Too many playmats. I've stopped buying playmats because when I buy them, they just end up in a box.
Yeah. There's so many cool ones, and you get that itch, and you pull the trigger, and next thing you know, you've got 16, 17 playmats, and you're, I gotta say though, when you're using these mats regularly, they do get worn down, they get dirty, the stitched edges get all fuzzy. So There's definitely room for more than one mat. Speaking of that, John DeProse has this kind of blank orange playmat on his left side. We got to get him one of these Four Horsemen, Ken Meyer Jr. Guardian Beast and Purple Moonlight mats.
Well, I mean, if he wins this tournament, he'll get one.
That's right. Let's see what happens. All right. The guys are ready to go. John's starting off.
It's funny. I've bought, like, I don't know how many mats I own. Probably over 20, I think. But the one that I play on all the time, I won for free. Like, why did I buy all these other mats? I don't know.
Yeah. So John goes first, starts off with the forest. No first turn creature for John DeProse. And Brandon quickly gets down a Tundra and a Strip Mine, while John DeProse gets a Argothian Pixies. Pretty good starts for both of these players.
I mean, Pixies is solid. It's going to beat for 2, and there's not really a lot of worry of, little creatures to block it. I mean, it would trade with a Sage, I guess, if Brandon drops a Sage. But
yeah.
What is that?
That's the giant slug or spitting slug. Spitting slug.
The thing from the dark.
Yeah, the
spitting slug. Thank you.
Yeah, 2/4
Yeah.
spitting slug. He can be first strike if you pay 2 green. He's a heavy hitter really for 3 mana.
Yeah, 2/4 for 3 is great. I was playing that card earlier today in another format. It's pretty good.
Sage comes down.
Oh,
for Brandon.
There's the Sage. I manifested it.
There it is. Yeah. So
does he bother swinging with it? He does swing with both. So this is really interesting. He's going to offer the trade, but he could just attack with the spitting slug and not attack with the 2/1. But it's probably good to just keep on keeping on. It's not like he doesn't have more dudes. There's another one right there. Is that a dragonfly?
That is an emerald. Yeah, I think that is an emerald dragonfly. Yeah, I think it was definitely worth it to block that pixie with the Sage. That's another, nice trade. Being able to at least have the 1/2 damage. Pixies can just really wreak havoc if you get them out on turn 2.
I definitely think there's some players that might have tried to get more value out of their Sage by holding on to it, and maybe drawing a card or something. But I think it's absolutely was the right move to kind of turn down the faucet on the damage here, because the real challenge here is going to be surviving the early game, the early onslaught. If he can, there's an Arnhem. If he can, if he has a remove soul here, that would be clutch. But I don't see him playing one, so I guess he doesn't. Yeah, if he can survive the early onslaught, he's good. But not being able to deal with that Arnhem. Oh, Spirit Link. Yeah, there it is. So he's doing pretty good. He's doing pretty good fending off the. He's only taken 5 damage. He's got a factory. So
yeah, the factory's going to help.
All right.
He's hanging in there. So John DeProse is coming in with the slug and the emerald dragonfly with the Arnhem Spirit Linked. Arnhem number 2. Yes, now the heavy hitting really starts. So he's going to need another Spirit Link or a blocker. He really needs to come into his Dancing Scimitars, or even that Tano's Coffin would be handy.
A Scimitar would be great here. Like, he could just smack it down and it would just stonewall that dude, and at least until like a Scavenger Folk or something comes up. But alas, he plays nothing at all. That seems not great.
Yeah, pass turn, not good. 6 cards though. He's got almost a full grip. He could use a Mazavith as well. Any of those cards to help slow down the onslaught. It's just there's so many dudes coming at him every turn. Okay, so he's animating the factory, and he's gonna block and tap it to make it a 3/3, so it can block the spitting slug. Oh, look at this, John.
I mean, those are both good. So the scavenger folk's pretty good here because he can just he can pop the scimitar now, or he could have popped the factory, but he'll just pop the scimitar, and then he can fly in with those bees for 3. So he's gonna take 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. He's gonna take 10. He's dead. Like, I don't even know why he played that. Like, playing that scimitar is no good here. There's nothing he can have for 1 blue. He's like, he's dead this turn.
Wow. Yeah, the onslaught from John DeProse was so fast. So many creatures coming at you. 1 or 2 new creatures every turn. And he only's had 2 blockers, the 1 factory and the 1 Sage of Latnam. So yeah, he can blow up the Dancing Scimitar with the Scavenger Folk. And he hit in for 4, 5, 6, 7. And then he can pump the bees for, yeah. Wow. Holy crap, that was fast.
That was brutal.
Yeah, very.
Brandon really needed, like, an early remove soul there that he didn't have. Like, if he could have, you know, maybe countered the second Urnum, or even the first Urnum and Spirit Link the second one, that might have helped. But I don't know. John's onslaught was nonstop. Like, even if he stopped both of those, he would have had to deal with the killer bees after that, and that thing would have been coming in for like 4 or 5 a turn as well.
Right. All right, let's go back over to the decks real quick while the guys are sideboarding, and let's take a look at the sideboards. All right, so let's start with John DeProse. If you're John, now these guys, they're in top 8, so they've seen the deck photos. They kind of know what their opponents are on. What's John going to slide in here? Is he going to put in any anti-artifacts since there's a bunch of them? He's got 3 scavenger folks.
He could. He has a little room to work with because I think he could pull out those Gosbon Ogres because he's playing against a Chain Lightning deck. I don't think it's necessarily great to leave those in.
Yeah.
And then he could bring in maybe like the extra scavenger folk and a couple of crumbles or something like that. Mm-hmm. Maybe bring in an Avoid Fate or 2 to stop, you know, the Spirit Links and whatnot. I don't know. He doesn't need to do much. He's already got a really good matchup here, a really favorable matchup.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Pop out the Gazbans, pop in an extra Scavenger Folk. He really doesn't need that Maze of Ith. He needs to stick to his aggro strategy. So I would take out the Maze as well and maybe put in.
I mean, maybe even the Ogres are good just because. I mean, is it likely that he's going to have a chain and a red source on turn 1? Because as long as it doesn't get stolen right away, you know, he's going to be beaten in with all his guys. I don't know. I suppose I'd still take him out just to be safe, though.
Yeah, I would take out 1 Gazban and 1 Maze of Ith. I'd put in that extra Scavenger Folk, and I would put in, like you said, maybe one of those Avoid Fates. If he took out the second or third Gazban, he could put in a couple more Avoid Fates. And then he's
and Gazban's safe to play later too, because like if you're beaten face, like I mean, you saw how quickly he knocked 10 life points off of him in the first game,
right?
You know, so
okay. So if you're Brandon, what do you put in? If you're Brandon, he's going to need to think fast and act fast. He needs maybe that extra gaseous form. He needs that acid rain, but he really doesn't have a ton of fast, quick, early cards to help him get in. What do you put in if you're Brandon?
I mean, I would the cards you mentioned, but then also I know it's expensive, but I still probably bring in the extra pyrotechnics anyway, because if he can survive and make it there, he might be able to get a 2-for-1 on him,
right? And
you know, continue to dig out of the hole. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what he's gonna do really.
Yeah, it's a tough matchup for Brandon. All right, the guys are shuffling up and drawing. We should probably get back over to the match.
Maybe he gets an early Ivory Tower, but even then, you know, there's lots of ways for that to be destroyed.
Okay, so Brandon's on the play. Plays a nice little signed Mark Poole Beta Island. John's starting off with a Forest and a Scavenger Folk.
Well, there's something. There's an early Maze of Ith. That helps out.
Yeah, that could be huge for Brandon, actually.
I mean, it stops one guy, so it does stop early damage, but it's not real great against an onslaught of a bunch of dudes. And it also hampers him because he's now used one of his land drops to play a land that doesn't add mana. But I don't know. I still think it's good. It'll still help get him to the mid game, hopefully.
Man, I was really hoping to see Brandon drop a Sage of Latinum here. With the Maze and the Sage of Latinum, that could have really helped him. But John comes down with a Pendlehaven turn 3, and coming in with both the Folk and the Pixies, and then Pendlehavening the Scavenger Folk to get him +1/+2, so hitting him for 2 damage.
You know what else is great about this green deck is that we're a proxy friendly format, and we don't care what if you proxy your whole deck, whatever. We're more interested in the mechanics of the game. But certainly there's players that just don't want to play with proxies. They'll still come play, but they're just going to play with what they own. And the nice thing about this green deck is there's like no expensive cards in this green deck. Like you could build this whole deck for next to nothing. Yeah. I mean, I guess there's one Sylvan Library.
But even Sylvan Library has been reprinted a ton, and you can get more reprint for real cheap.
Yeah, by old school standards especially, it's a very, very cheap deck to be able to put together.
Check this out, John. So meanwhile, Brandon plays Dancing Scimitar on turn 5, and John gets the Crumble. So he did sideboard those Crumble in. Gets rid of that Scimitar. It gains Eddie, or Nice Guy Eddie, a.k.a. Brandon, 4 life, which he's quickly going to lose to all these creatures hitting him.
Yeah, it was. And then he gets to keep his Scavenger Folk to blow something else up and continue to attack with. I mean, this is kind of like what we saw the first game, but it's going to be hard to hold him off. So there's the Gaseous Form that came out of the board.
Ah, nice.
I'm pretty surprised he didn't put it on the bees.
Yes, I was thinking he would put it on the bees as well, but maybe he's reconsidering here. The Maze of Ith can handle the bees too.
Oh, that's true. I mean, I guess it doesn't matter. I guess he can maze the bees, but like, if the maze gets destroyed later by like a strip mine, I would want it on those bees. Those bees are scary.
Yeah, they can hit in for a ton of damage. +1/+1 for every forest, every green mana. Okay, so he's getting in with the Wailulu Wolves and the Scavengers, hitting in for 3 more damage.
I mean, I guess he just has nothing better to do, but like, I just feel like slamming the Scimitar here is like a foregone conclusion. Like, he knows it's going to get blown up by the Scavenger Folk. What's the point of it? Well, like, I guess that's the point of it, to get rid of the Scavenger Folk.
Right.
So continue to play.
Yeah, it does get rid of the Folk, and he does have Tetravis and Triskelion, so he wants to lure the artifact damage out of the way so that he can drop a Scavenger and fire off, a Triskelion and fire off all the Triskelion arms,
Wailulu Wolf getting pumped by Pendlehaven's funny. It's like, I'm attacking, so I can't use my own ability, but I still get it.
You gotta love the wolf.
Urnum comes down, so now he's got to decide whether he mazes the bees, but he's still going to take an Urnum on the chin. That's rough.
That is rough. He needs Spirit Link, but he doesn't have any white mana. If you notice, he's only got the 3 islands and the 1 volcanic, so he's got 6 cards. He's probably got a Spirit Link in his hand and can't cast it. So
it's always interesting to me to see decks like, Brandon obviously did well in this tournament. Like, this is a quarterfinals match, right?
Yeah.
And he did really well, but then you run up against something like this and it's just a bloodbath.
Yeah, it's really rough. I mean, John is just hitting left and right. It's like a boxing match where so many punches are being thrown, you never get a reprieve. And oh look, Brandon finally gets white mana, but it's City of Brass, costs some damage, and he's able to Spirit Link the Urnum.
That's so sad. In order to Spirit Link, he has to take another life point from himself.
Ugh, that is rough. And he's down to 4.
So now the wolf alone puts him on a 2-turn clock. Yeah. That's really terrible.
He's got 4 tundras, 4 plateaus, 2 plains, and 2 City of Brass. So he's got 12 white mana sources, and he didn't get any white mana until this late in the game, and it really hurt him here.
Oh my God! Goes to 1 for another Spirit Link.
Oh, ouch. That's rough.
But now here's the thing. Can he stabilize at 1? This is gonna be funny if he does. I mean, I feel like John just jams another creature this turn, right? Like the hits don't keep. Yeah, there it is. There's a dervish.
Oh wow, dervish coming down. Yeah, and he's so he's so low on life at this point. There's a dancing scimitar.
There's a crumble.
And there's a crumble. Okay, well, at least he'll gain 4 life, putting him back to 5 life. He does have divine offerings in there, but he really needs something else to block with, and he's got nothing going on. He's got the 1 Mazavith and takes it on the chin from the wolf, getting pumped by the Pimblehaven, so 2 more damage. Ouch.
Just look at this relentless flow of creatures. It's just impossible to deal with.
Well, it's not impossible to deal with. It's just very difficult. Now,
there's no sweepers, so like once you're behind, like it's pretty difficult to overcome. I mean, what cards would Brandon even be able to draw in his deck to like deal with this onslaught?
Not much in Brandon's deck. But you know, Brandon is not playing things like Ghost Ships and Azure Drakes and Clockwork Avians. You know, there are creatures that can deal with these small little weenie attackers. There's the Fortress Gillian in hand that he had and couldn't play.
Dude, that's so funny. He had all 4.
Oh, he needed a workshop or something.
Or just like another land. I mean, City of Brass hurt him too, but
yeah. That was really rough.
I don't know. Like, I feel like this deck could go all the way. This green deck.
The green deck is killer. The mono green Stompy, just brutal, crushing Brandon mercilessly and pretty rapidly too. This was not a long game. We're at 28 minutes into the video, so this was quite the aggressive 1-2 punch knocking out Brandon.
Well, congratulations to Brandon anyway for making it this far in the tournament, and I think it's cool that he kind of did a remix of some of those favorite cards. You know, we've seen those cards, but we haven't really seen this arrangement of them, and obviously it did well for him up until now, but it just couldn't handle the super aggro.
Yeah. The guys are talking about here what they sideboarded in. So yeah, so John put in his 4 crumbles, the 1 Scavenger Folk, and the Sword of the Ages. So pretty, and he took out, look what he took out here. The Elves of Deep Shadow, the 2 Dragonflies, and the Sylvan. Interesting.
Just stuff that, like, doesn't beat for as much damage, you know? Like, some of those 1/1s are fine. And Sylvan, who cares? Like, Sylvan's usually a great card, and you want to jam it early, and you want to draw stuff. But, like, this deck is so homogenous that, like, you'd really almost rather just draw another creature than draw the Sylvan. Like, you want to just be playing a creature every turn, or 2 creatures if you can.
Well, on the contrary, the Sylvan I would have left in for the sheer reason of I'm going to pay life and draw more cards if I'm John DePros. So.
Oh, sure. Like, I guess if he jammed it early, he'd just, like, you know, draw 2 or 3 cards a turn and not care.
Yeah.
Because it's not like he took any damage.
Yeah. I would have left the Sylvan in. I do like putting in the swords.
That's a fair point.
Yeah, so he only needs those elves to accelerate into Urnum. And he's got enough mana, and he's got enough small creatures. He can play his mana curve to ramp into Urnum naturally. He doesn't need those elves. I do like the idea of him taking out the elves to put in the crumbles, but I definitely would have kept that Sylvan. So what did Brandon put in here? He's got the 3 Scavenger Folk, the Pyrotechnics. He took out 3 Dancing Scimitars and he put in a Gaseous Form, an Acid Rain, and a Pyrotechnics.
Yeah, that seems pretty good because he knows that there's a bunch of artifact removal across the board.
Right.
And he just brought in things that are better answers to what's going on over there. I mean, not that he saw any. I mean, I guess he saw the Gaseous Form. He was able to use that.
Yeah. All right, so let's get back to the decks and let's take a look at the brackets. So for the bracket, so John DePros will be proceeding ahead to the semifinals, and we will have those videos out on the YouTube channel. That wraps up the match for tonight. Congratulations to John DePros, one of our new Australian Four Horsemen crew players, making it into the semifinals. Thanks for being with us. Thanks for joining me tonight, John, and we'll see everybody next time.
See you next time.